All right, guys, so today in front of me from Jack Daniel's, we have their straight Tennessee rye whiskey finished in high toast maple barrels. So this one comes in at 101 proof. It was barreled in 2017 and finished in high toast no-char maple barrels in 2021 with a release date of 2022. This was actually selected by Jack Daniel's taster Josh Phillips, whereas his wife selected the straight Tennessee rye whiskey finished in high toast oak barrels. So both of them had to pick. Which one's going to be better, guys? Let's find out right now, guys. Without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so as I stated, this one does come in at 101 proof. It was finished in high toast, no-char maple barrels. Let's go ahead and get in the nose. So on this one, it comes off a little oaky. So further into the glass, I do pick up like a sweet oak, but there's also like a hint of mint further into the glass as well. Further away from the glass, I pick up like some burnt baking spices. Then I also pick up like this candy corn that's kind of further into the glass with some of that oak, some of those there's again those burnt baking spices kind of that sit further away on the nose. But it is very, very sweet, very candy-like. But it definitely lets you know that, that high toast influence is there on the nose because it does have almost like a little bit of that toasty note to it. Not necessarily like a marshmallow sweetness coming through, but you can kind of like smell not the char again because there was no char, but like that toastiness from it, that oaky toastiness. Again, very, very sweet on the nose, burnt kind of baking spices there. Further away from the glass, again, some of that rye starts to make an appearance, and then there's also some mint as well that's further away. Really nice nose, guys. Let's get in the palate. Cheers. So I'll tell you, on that sip, I would never guess that drank 101 proof because it drank way higher. I think that has a lot to do with that, with those rye spices, because I can actually taste that on the middle of the palate. Front of the palate again is some of that oakiness, some of that toasty kind of oak makes that appearance there on the front of the palate. But then it starts to get a little bit sweet there on the mid palate. Nice kind of like some caramels, some vanillas kind of as undertones. And then on the back of the palate, it kind of goes back to that oakiness. So it's like, that toasted kind of oakiness on the front of the palate. Sweetness kind of follows through on that mid palate, kind of like some undertones of some caramel, some vanilla, some of that rye spice kind of tingling there on the mid to back palate. The end of the finish, again, it kind of converts back to that kind of like that toasty oak kind of note. It's weird how that kind of worked out. Typically it's a lot of the sweetness that comes like on the approaches there on the front of the palate, but it started out with that oakiness a little bit. It was a little drying on that first sip. Let's see what happens on the second one, guys. Okay, so that sip definitely changed. Still get some of that like caramelized kind of toasty oak there on the front of the palate. Middle of the palate, now that spiciness has gone down, it brought forth like a ton of like peanut butter, peanut brittle, a lot of like nuttiness to it with a slight hint of like some maple syrup there. I was hoping the maple was going to kind of like be a little bit more present there on the palate. Again, just a slight hint on the mid to back palate of like some maple syrup there. But again, it's like a maple kind of candy. Again, some of those rye spices, like the spiciness is not there, but the flavor of it's still there. And then into the back, it's again you get some of that kind of toasty caramelized oak flavor that sits there on the back, and it is slightly drying on the palate. It's definitely not as sweet as the high toast finish in the oak barrels. It's not as sweet. It has some decent flavors to it, but they kind of fade away fairly quick. And I mean the finish again, it's probably a pretty short finish. However, I mean on the other hand, it does kind of make you want to go back for more, fairly quickly. Let's get a last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so again, I mean, flavors now are staying fairly consistent. Again, that kind of, again, burnt, caramelized oak, front of the palate, mid palate, very peanut buttery, peanut brittle, slight hint of toffee maybe in there. Get us maybe slight hint of like one of those maple little candy chews. Back of the palate, again, some of that rye spice still kind of lingers on there from the back and into the finish with some of that caramelized oak as well. That kind of carries it through. But again, the finish is very short. I mean, again, it has decent flavors to it. I wish it was a little bit sweeter. I wish there was more of a maple influence to it. Again, finish on this one is a little short. However, the flavors are fairly nice, but to me, this one doesn't live up to that high toast in the oak barrels. To me, that one was way more sweet, way more candy forward, marshmallow sweetness. This one is a little drying on the palate. On the high toasted oak barrels, I really didn't get that. This one again, just kind of. It doesn't have that viscosity or those kind of layers that coat the palate. But either way here, still a pretty decent release here from Jack Daniel's. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Jack Daniel's for supplying me with this bottle here to review on the channel. Again, this one, to me, again, it had some nice flavors to it. Kind of unique being finished in those high toast, no char maple barrels. Again, it definitely made sure that oak was present, that caramelized toasted oak. Definitely some peanut butter that went on there on that mid palate with some of those rye spices that were left kind of tingling around. And then back into the back of the palate, it just kind of got that same note as the front of the palate, where it was like this toasted caramelized oak. Again, slight hints of some toffee and one of those little maple chews. I wish there was a little more influence of that maple on this one. Again, the high toast, I think, definitely takes a leap over this one. Again, the palate was a little drying for me on this one on all three sips, so it was consistently kind of drying out the palate. But still, again, a lot of really nice flavors on it from Jack Daniel's. I think with the way that they release things, and I mean, just the last several releases from Jack Daniel's have just been top notch. Absolutely fantastic stuff, mind-blowing stuff as to what they're doing. To me, though, this one just kind of missed the mark. Again, that high toast and oak barrels, definitely a leap above this one. But needless to say, still some pretty decent flavors on this one, guys. So if you're looking for more reviews like this, hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Until next time, guys, say Dusty.